Welcome to Wetpixel Live. I'm Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Inon for sponsoring this episode. Inon do a range of strobes and wet contact lenses, arms, video lights, various other accessories. Please go over and check them out at inon.jp. That's inon.jp, and check out what they do. I'm joined today by Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam. Good to be here.
Nice to see you. We kind of thought that we often talk about, oh, we'll do this in Lightroom or we'll do this in Photoshop, but we never really talk about the platforms that we're running these software applications on. So I thought I'd ask Alex what sort of computing gear and software that he uses. What do you use to get your results, Alex?
Well, I have two computers, like a lot of people. I have a laptop that I take to the field with me, and I have a desktop that I use for processing at home. I have to say, the desktop becomes a little bit less easy to justify just because I think the laptops are becoming so capable, and actually maybe just a big screen when I get home might have been enough actually. But I have a desktop computer. So my laptop, I've used Apple computers since I was at university. When I started my PhD, I moved into a team who all used, Apple Macs at that point. My first Apple Mac was an LC2. Which was called LC on the network, the English name LC. So I always remember that. And so I've used Apple computers ever since that time. So I have an Apple laptop at the moment. I would say my laptops I tend to change more frequently than I change my desktop computers. So that they tend to get updated, I guess, about every 3 to 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. The desktops, generally, they usually last about most of 10 years, maybe 8, 9, 10 years between changing them. And in fact, I'm not really sure what to do with my desktop at the moment, even though it's getting to that sort of age. I have to say the need to upgrade on the desktop front is slightly less, really, because I think in the early days of me having computers, imaging was one of the heaviest usages of processing powers of graphic cards that you could use. But to be honest, it no longer really is. The cameras, yes, they are higher resolution, but only by a factor of 2 or 4. And the computers are way better than that. So actually, the computing power isn't so critical anymore, I don't think. Anyway, my laptop is a 2019 MacBook Pro. It's got a 2.6, I'm reading it off the screen here, 2.6 gigahertz, 6-core Enter, processor. Just so people who are interested in these things, it's got 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it's got an Intel graphics card, which is an additional thing, and it's got a 1 gig, I think it's 1 gig SSD hard drive in it, and that's my main travel computer. And I run as a travel computer, I run primarily Lightroom and Photoshop on that for processing images. I also use Bridge a lot, which I know most photographers don't use. And I use Bridge for managing my processed files, which I use a lot when I'm traveling because I'm teaching. And I use Lightroom for downloading and importing and optimizing my pictures. And I use Photoshop for finishing my pictures. I rarely finish a picture on my laptop. I usually do that at home on my desktop. But I need Photoshop in the field for sorting things out, for making stuff. So I have Photoshop on there, obviously. Just to run through my desktop is a much older Mac Pro connected to an EZO screen. I don't know what the screen is. I can't remember the code. It's all gobbledygook to me. It might even say on here, actually. Wait, the screen is a CG277 27-inch EZO display, which EZO make very nice displays. It's a very nice one. The processor on this is a 3.7 gigahertz quad core. It's quite an old computer, this. It's got 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it's got another solid state disk. It's only a half terabyte one in this one as opposed to a full terabyte on the laptop. I think I might have said gigabyte when I was going through it, so all the gigs of memory, but it's terabytes. And it's got a AMD graphics card in it as well. Maybe it's got 2 in it. I can't remember what the Mac Pro's got in it. But that computer, despite being old, can handle pretty much stuff. On this computer, the only software I'm really using at the moment is Lightroom, Photoshop, Bridge, and Topaz Denoise. I actually don't use any other software for processing, and that's really because it's a job for me, and speed is also important. I don't want to. Yes, it's really important we process our pictures well, but ultimately, for me as a photographer, people are always interested in my newest, most exciting images, and so there's that need to be constantly processing stuff. So that's kind of what I use. Nothing overly complicated, but hopefully those specs are useful for people. I would bear in mind that my computer is 8 years old or so, my desktop. So it's not like that's absolute, be all and end all. I'm sure the specs are much higher now, but to be honest, it copes perfectly well with what we do.
And I think this is a crucial thing. I think if we're processing huge amounts of 4K or 8K video or something, then all these, the performance then becomes much more critical. But neither you nor I are really doing a great deal of that. Yeah. So we can cope with lower spec computers. And I'm actually part of the reason for this episode is I have a classic cheese grater in Apple language, a 5.1 Mac Pro.
Yeah, mine's the black dustbin one.
Yeah, mine's the cheese grater one, but it's a computer. Actually, it was Eric's old computer. I think he bought it in 2010 or 2012. So it's again it's more than 10 years old, and unfortunately, with the last couple of iterations of Apple operating systems, they stopped supporting it. So they no longer support it. Now, one of the great joys about these cheese grater style Mac Pros is you can actually add bits to them. They're very modular. They have a lot of PCIe expansion. So which was always the design. The design was always that you could add stuff to them for specific purposes. So I've kept up. I have added bits to it. So it would be wrong to say that. And for example, I'm looking at my
Trigger's Broom type computer.
Yeah, I have a Radeon RX 580 8GB card, which I believe is a very good card. Yeah, graphics card in it, for example. But anyway. So Lightroom 11, latest one came out, and it was no longer supported by the operating system that my Mac Pro would run. And I started Googling around trying to find out what was going on. And there's a wonderful community of people who have produced it's open source, and I don't have to pay for it, app called OpenCore. It's not an app really. It's a way of basically mimicking the operating system to think that it's working on a much newer computer than it is. And I have to say, I'm into about a week now, and it's running the latest version of the Apple OS system. I'm running all the updated apps and programs, and so far it's seamless. And yes, the process of installing it, it's not an easy job. It's something that you'd sit down and spend a day or two figuring out. And one of the things I always liked about Macs is that I don't have to spend a lot of time hacking them about. They work. And this wasn't like that. It took a bit more doing, but actually now I've done it, it seems really, really good. So it's a great. I mean, these are old computers, but really bringing them bang up to date. They'll work with all the new software. It's a really good solution. An open core.
And I think you're finding the same thing as me, despite the fact we both have 40 plus megapixel cameras. We're actually finding that image processing is no longer the thing that stretches computers to their limits. No. And actually, good older machines are really important. What monitor do you use, Adam?
So I've got two monitors. I've got two, they're two Dell IPS monitors, which again at the time I bought these actually recommended by Drew Wong on the Wetpixel forum at the time, and they're Dell IPS monitors. They're Dell sort of photographic standard monitors, and they're fine. I can see the Dell boy joke about.
No. I was wondering I was just thinking about what Drew may have been watching on them before you.
Oh yeah, no, I think but anyway. Yeah, but they're fairly pedestrian monitors. I do calibrate them periodically, so that helps. But they're fine. They do the job. And I have a bunch of I think most of a bunch of external hard drives, which are the images get stored on, and then also where obviously they get backed up to and stuff. But storage is now cheap. I mean, I was looking at buying some bigger hard drives for one of my RAID drives, and you can buy 8 terabyte hard drives for £100. So $150, you can get an 8 terabyte. It's crazy.
Yeah.
An 8 terabyte is a lot of storage.
Yeah, no, it's a reminder that we should all just spend that money every now and again and just make an additional backup of everything. Just to be on the safe side.
So like you, I run Lightroom primarily, and I use Photoshop, and and the other app that, what's possibly, I do use the Topaz denoise and occasionally sharpened, but most of the time just denoise. The other one that I use a lot is Photomechanic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I know you use that.
That's my browser. That's my equivalent of Bridge in your.
Yeah, but you use it on RAW files as well, don't you?
I can do, although primarily I use it as an image browser. So it's my way of finding stuff, and then particularly process files. So you can use it. You can use it for very quickly ingesting raw files, but that's more something I probably use on my laptop. And I think this is probably, my laptop's an old laptop. I don't want to get bogged down in this really, but it's an old 2013 MacBook Pro. At the time, it was very high spec, but obviously again, it's showing its age. Its battery's actually just about died, so I've ordered new batteries to put into it. So that's my next job. But the again, that's one that I use in the field, and essentially because I'm operating in the field, with relatively limited computing demands, I find it copes fine. It's not a problem, and I've no particular urge to upgrade it. That was kind of. But then one of the things that I thought about a while ago is obviously iPads are becoming increasingly powerful.
I think this is. I don't know the answer to these questions because I'm not a computer person, but I do feel that my laptop is quite big and heavy, and whether a MacBook Air or an iPad Pro or something would actually handle what I need to do in the field. I'm not sure the iPad Pro would, but maybe a MacBook Air would.
I thought long and hard about iPad Pros and actually very nearly went down that route until I realized the biggest problem is you can run an external hard drive, so the storage issue is not really an issue. You can import into an external hard drive, but you can't create a Lightroom catalog. So basically you're in a situation where you can use the Lightroom, which will sync wirelessly to Lightroom as opposed to Lightroom Classic, but then you can't get all your edits from that into Lightroom Classic, which for me means it's a non-starter until there's the ability to actually move. I don't do a great deal of editing in the field, but I do some.
Yeah, and you want that catalog, we talked in the catalog one about adding keywords and getting stuff organized and into fold. You don't want to be, you've got the time in the field to get on top of that stuff. So
yeah. Now, whether a MacBook Air or similar would do the same job, it's possible it might. But yeah, it's a long-term solution. So I mean, it's quite interesting, as you mentioned. We used to be sort of cutting-edge computer users, and increasingly now I think the computers have overtaken us, and we don't need that sort of cutting edge. We can get by with older computers, albeit possibly hacked and cobbled together a bit, but they seem to do the job fine. So
no, it's a very interesting point. I'd agree with that in that okay, things like denoise maybe takes a few seconds to run, and big panoramas take a few minutes to stitch, but we're not doing focus stacking, we're not doing star trails and all that sort of thing, typically. So it's not like we're really heavy image, computer users as underwater photographers. So I think it's probably why it's, it used to be such a big question on the forums. What computer are you using? And I think now it's actually people are. I mean, I regularly have people coming on workshops with just an iPad, and because they like that travel friendly nature of it.
Yeah, I think it definitely has options. That's wonderful, Alex. Just a brief touch into what we do with our images once we've shot them. So thank you very much. And thanks again to our sponsor this episode. Thanks very much to Inon for sponsoring this episode. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to drop us, to add any comments, or possibly let us know what you use for editing your images, what devices you use, and drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.